Welcome to Cybersecurity Under Pressure. Real attacks, real lessons. Every breach starts with something small. A trusted login, a missed alert, a system no one thought could matter. Here, we follow the incident. How it began, how it moved, what broke under pressure, and what security engineering and business teams should learn before the next one. Because the next attack will not wait for a perfect plan. Now, let's follow the evidence.
Welcome to Cybersecurity Under Pressure. Real attacks, real lessons. Today is Friday, June 19th, 2026. You can't make this up. Well, you could, but nobody would believe you, especially when it comes to the vulnerabilities in ECU flashing stations.
Yeah, I mean, I really wish we were making it up, because when you actually look at the architecture of modern factory floors, it's genuinely a dark comedy of errors at this point.
Oh, absolutely.
So our mission today is to really take you, the listener, behind the curtain of the automotive industry's massive digital transformation. We need to unpack how this incredible leap forward in technology has accidentally, and I mean completely inadvertently here, turned the physical factory floor, the global supply chain, and, the vehicle sitting right in your driveway into one massive, highly fragile attack surface.
It's a completely different paradigm now.
Yeah.
I mean, 50 years ago, making a car was a mechanical science, right?
Metal and grease.
Exactly. It was about stamping sheet metal, bolting engine blocks together, checking tolerances. But now, we're essentially building giant mobile data centers that just happen to have wheels.
That's the perfect way to look at it, mobile data centers.
And the factory floor. That's ground zero. Let's anchor this in a harsh reality first, because the stakes of an operational technology or OT cyber attack are not like theoretical whiteboard exercises anymore.
Oh, not at all.
We have to look at what happened to Jaguar Land Rover.
Yeah, that incident. That is the textbook case study for what happens when the digital world violently bleeds into the physical assembly line.
Right. So let's look at late August 31st to be exact. A cyber attack hits JLR. And we need to be clear about the scale here, because we aren't talking about a few laptops in an HR department getting locked out with a ransom note.
No, this was a complete operational standstill.
It completely paralyzed their production lines in central and northwest England.
The robotic arms literally stop moving. The conveyors halt. The entire, the choreography of just-in-time manufacturing just freezes in its tracks.
They actually had to send workers home.
Which is wild.
And not just a single shift on a single line. We are talking about sending home a massive chunk of their 30,000 employees.
Wow.
Yeah. They were forced to halt operations until at least October 1st, an entire month of zero production.
That is just catastrophic downtime.
It is. The financial toll of a physical line stoppage like that is staggering. InfoSecurity magazine reported that cyber attacks cost car makers like JLR $258 million in Q2 alone.
$258 million.
Evaporating in a single quarter.
And, the cascading effects make that number even worse, because Tata Motors, JLR's parent company, has tens of thousands of more jobs in their broader supply chain.
Right, the ripple effect.
Exactly. When a major OEM, an original equipment manufacturer, stops pulling parts from its suppliers, well, those suppliers have to halt their own lines.
Because they have nowhere to send the parts.
Right. Logistics trucks get backed up, warehouses overflow. It's basically a massive arterial blockage in the local economy.
Which raises an incredibly important question for us. If a modern automotive plant is essentially a giant, hyper-complex computer that just spits out luxury SUVs, why are manufacturers such popular targets for these specific kinds of ransomware gangs? Is it just because they're multi-billion-dollar corporations with deep pockets?
I mean, the deep pockets are the attraction, sure, but the low pain threshold is the actual leverage.
The low pain threshold. What do you mean by that?
Well, in manufacturing, tolerance for downtime is practically zero. If an e-commerce website goes down for an hour, people might just come back later.
Oh, yeah, they'll refresh the page.
Yeah. But if an automotive assembly line stops, they are burning millions of dollars an hour in overhead, idle labor, and missed delivery quotas. The attackers understand this economic pressure perfectly.
They know the pain points.
They know these OEMs are highly motivated to pay the ransoms simply to make the financial bleeding stop. But The ransomware shutting down the line, as bad as that is, actually isn't the most terrifying part of this ecosystem.
Oh, come on. A multi-hundred million dollar, month-long factory shutdown isn't the worst part.
It really isn't. Because the shutdown is temporary.
Right.
You clean the servers, you restore the backups, and you turn the machines back on. The truly terrifying vulnerability lies at a very specific physical location on the assembly line, the ECU flashing station.
Okay, let's unpack this for the listener. The ECU flashing station. This is the hardware at the very end of the production line, correct?
Yes. Think of it as the final checkpoint. A modern vehicle has dozens, sometimes over 100, electronic control units, or ECUs.
The brains.
Right, the small computers controlling everything from the anti-lock brakes and the engine timing to, like, the infotainment screen and the power windows.
Got it.
When the car rolls down the line, those ECUs are mostly blank slates. The flashing station is where the plant server provides the compiled software package, and the diagnostic tool physically injects that firmware into the vehicle's ECUs. It's the moment where product cybersecurity and factory cybersecurity violently collide.
I see where this is going. The flashing station is the physical bridge. It connects the IT network of the factory, which we just established is highly vulnerable to compromise, to the internal closed network of the fresh vehicle.
You've nailed the architecture. And if an attacker compromises that specific station, well, the implications change completely.
Right, because it's no longer an OT incident. It's not about stopping the factory anymore. If they compromise the flashing station, the vehicle is born compromised before the customer ever even touches the door handle.
Exactly. It leaves the factory as a sleeper agent.
Man, it makes me think of a hospital nursery.
How so?
Well, imagine a baby is born perfectly healthy, but someone in the nursery swaps their medical chart or their ID bracelet.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The baby goes out into the world, but the rest of their life is a case of mistaken identity or wrong treatments because the foundational record was corrupted at the absolute source. The damage is baked in from day one.
That is a dark analogy, but it's mechanically spot on. A compromised plant server could silently alter the firmware package right before injection.
Without anyone noticing.
Right. It could load the wrong regional software version, or inject a backdoor, or crucially expose the diagnostic key material that secures the car.
Which undermines everything.
Completely. You could have a vehicle engineered with a perfectly functional, state-of-the-art secure boot mechanism.
That's the cryptographic check, right?
Yeah, that secure boot is designed to cryptographically verify software before running it to prevent malware. But it will flawlessly, happily boot up malicious firmware because the factory flashing station, which the car recognizes as the ultimate trusted authority, signed that malicious software and told the car it was legitimate.
So the vehicle's own internal defense system is doing its job, but it's protecting the very malware that's infecting it because the chain of trust was broken at the absolute root. No. That is wild.
And that's the scenario that keeps security engineers awake at night. I mean, you could be tracing a massive fleet anomaly months later, out on the road, trying to figure out how 10,000 cars suddenly have a critical brake timing glitch.
Right, you'd think it was a new attack. Yeah.
You'd be looking for a cellular hack or a malicious over-the-air update, only to eventually discover that the initial compromise didn't happen on the highway. It happened via a tainted Ethernet cable at a flashing station in the factory 2 years ago.
Meaning the attacker doesn't need to wirelessly hack the car at all. They just need to persist in the factory's IT network and poison the well.
Yep.
This connects perfectly to the underlying language these machines use to talk to each other. We need to look under the hood of the flashing station and examine the UDS protocol.
Ah, UDS, Unified Diagnostic Services.
The ultimate master key. I spent hours reading through the Arcos preprint from the ECU 2025 conference, detailing UDS security monitoring strategies. The scale of its usage is mind-blowing.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, UDS is utilized throughout an ECU's entire life cycle. It's not just a factory tool, it's used in research and development, during testing, operation, maintenance at the dealership, all the way to decommissioning in the scrapyard. Tell me how this protocol actually functions mechanically.
So at its core, UBS is a request-response protocol running over the vehicle's internal network, usually the CAN bus. It facilitates communication between the vehicle's ECUs and diagnostic testers.
And a tester in this context is what exactly?
A tester can be an external piece of hardware like the factory flashing station we just talked about, or a mechanic's tablet at your local garage, or it can be a centralized computer internal to the vehicle itself. The protocol uses specific commands called service identifiers, or SIDs, to instruct the ECU on what actions to perform.
Let's make this concrete. What kind of commands are we talking about? How is the tester manipulating the ECU?
There is a massive catalog of these service identifiers, but a few critical ones do the heavy lifting. You have SID 0 by 10, which is diagnostic session control.
Okay, what does that do?
Think of this as telling the ECU to change its state of awareness. It instructs the ECU to enter a specific diagnostic session, like a programming session, which prepares it to receive new software, or an extended diagnostic session for deep troubleshooting.
So it's essentially the tester saying, wake up, drop your normal driving routines, and get ready to accept highly sensitive administrative commands.
Precisely. Once you have the ECU's attention, you might use SID 0 by 34, which is request download.
Request download. Sounds pretty straightforward.
It is. This is the command used to initiate the actual transfer of new software or calibration data into the ECU's memory. It's the literal mechanism of firmware injection.
And before you can do any of that firmware injection, you have to get past the gatekeeper, which brings us to the big one. SID 0 by 2 and 7.
Oh man, 0 by 2 is 7, security access.
Why does that specific hex code induce such a visceral reaction?
Right.
What makes 0 by 27 the pain point here?
Because security access is supposed to be the vault door. It's the authentication mechanism that must be cleared before you can run any sensitive routines, read proprietary data, or download new firmware.
Okay.
But historically and tragically for the industry, automotive engineers have relied on something called secret algorithms to derive cryptographic keys from random seeds to pass this authentication.
Wait. I need to stop you there. You're telling me that the multi-billion-dollar automotive industry, an industry building 2-ton physical machines that hurl human beings down the highway at 80 miles an hour, is seriously still relying on security by obscurity?
Pragmatically speaking, yes.
Right.
The legacy architecture still heavily relies on it.
I need to understand the mechanics of this seed key exchange. How does it physically work when the mechanic plugs in their tablet?
It's a standard challenge response handshake. The diagnostic tester connects to the vehicle and sends a message asking the ECU for a seed.
Okay, so just a random number.
Yeah, the ECU generates a random number, the seed, and sends it back to the tester. The tester takes that random number, runs it through a proprietary secret mathematical algorithm, and generates a specific key.
Got it.
It transmits that key back to the ECU. The ECU, meanwhile, runs that exact same secret algorithm on its own seed. If the key the tester sends matches the key the ECU calculated, the ECU determines the tester is legitimate and grants privileged access.
But there is a massive logical flaw there. If the algorithm is secret, how does the external mechanics tablet or the factory flashing station know how to calculate it?
Well, the tester tool has the secret algorithm hard-coded directly into its own software.
Let me make sure I'm hearing this clearly. The secret mathematical formula needed to unlock the vehicle's brain is sitting inside the software of a diagnostic tool that anyone can buy or download.
Yes.
That is essentially like sending someone a highly secure, reinforced steel safe, but taping the mathematical formula to forge the master key directly onto the bottom of the box. It completely negates the security.
It does, and attackers are fully aware of this paradigm. The UDS attack taxonomies we look at in cybersecurity research list highly specific, documented techniques to exploit this.
Like what?
For example, there's ATPE4, which is brute force security access. If the seed generated by the ECU is too short, say only 2 bytes, or the algorithm is mathematically weak, an attacker can just write a simple script to hammer the ECU with thousands of key guesses per second until the lock clicks open.
I imagine modern ECUs have rate limiting though. Like how a smartphone locks you out for 5 minutes if you guess the passcode wrong 3 times.
Many do, yes. And when the brute force door is closed, the attacker simply pivots to ATDS6.
And what's that one?
That technique is reverse engineering the security access algorithm entirely.
Walk me through how an attacker physically does that. Because it sounds like Hollywood hacker magic.
It's not magic, it's just tedious assembly level reading. An attacker gets their hands on a legitimate diagnostic tool. Maybe they buy a mechanics tablet off eBay, or they find a leaked firmware update file on an automotive forum.
Right, which isn't hard to do.
Not at all. They extract the binary code from that tool. Then they load that binary into a disassembler program tools like IDEA Pro or Ghidra. These programs translate the raw ones and zeros back into human-readable assembly language.
So they can see the underlying logic.
Exactly. The attacker searches through that code, finds the subroutine handling the UDS 0x27 communication, and simply reads the underlying math. They extract the secret constant, the shift operations, whatever the algorithm uses.
And once they pull that algorithm out of the software,
The secret is burned. It's completely compromised forever. The attacker can now write their own custom software that generates a valid key for any seed the ECU ever throws at them. They are permanently authenticated.
it's basically an Easter egg hunt for hackers.
Yeah.
They aren't breaking the encryption, they are just finding where the engineers hid the key.
That is exactly the problem. And once they possess that algorithm, they move to the next phase of the taxonomy. They can utilize ATDE4, which allows them to bypass operational checks entirely. Or, if they are physically on the factory floor, they can execute ATLM1, a man-in-the-middle attack.
How does a man-in-the-middle work on a physical assembly line?
Imagine the cable connecting the flashing station to the vehicle. An attacker with physical access, or someone who has compromised the network routing the traffic, intercepts the UDS messages in real time.
It's like a wiretap.
Yeah, the flashing station thinks it's talking to the ECU, and the ECU thinks it's talking to the flashing station. The attacker sits in between, letting the legitimate station handle the complex security access handshake.
Because the station has the real keys.
Right. Once the station unlocks the ECU, the attacker drops the legitimate firmware and injects their own malicious payload over the open, authenticated connection.
So the UDS protocol, this deeply integrated system designed to diagnose, fix, and update cars, is simultaneously the precise mechanism attackers use to completely own them.
Because these low-level security events govern the highest levels of access, the entire vehicle's integrity is suspended by a very thin thread. If you bypass security access, you can rewrite the firmware. You own the physical behavior of the ECU.
Wow.
When you scale that vulnerability across massive industrial manufacturing settings producing millions of vehicles, the attack surface becomes almost incomprehensible.
Let's take that concept of scale and pivot to an environment that takes these vulnerabilities and magnifies them through sheer logistics and isolation. If passenger cars are a complex puzzle, commercial 18-wheelers are a completely different, exponentially heavier nightmare.
Oh, the commercial heavy truck space is fascinating from an engineering standpoint, but from a cybersecurity perspective, it is a massive systemic challenge.
I was reviewing the National Motor Freight Traffic Association guidelines, the NMFTA best practices for secure device provisioning in heavy trucks. Why does this specific ecosystem struggle so profoundly with robust security compared to standard passenger vehicles? Is it just the size of the network?
It's less about the network size and entirely about the life cycle and the extreme operational environments. Heavy commercial trucks have incredibly long lifespans. We aren't talking about a consumer leasing a sedan for 36 months and trading it in.
Right, these are million-mile vehicles.
These trucks are massive capital investments expected to be on the road for decades. They are often sold to secondary, tertiary, or quaternary buyers in less developed countries, operating long past their intended end of life.
Meaning the original equipment manufacturer who designed the security architecture loses total visibility of the asset. They have no idea where the truck is, who owns it, or what software it's running.
Correct. And then you have to factor in the physical environments where these machines operate. We think of trucks on highways with constant 5G coverage. But heavy trucks operate in deeply remote locations.
Like where?
Imagine a fleet of logging trucks in the northern Canadian tundra, or massive dump trucks in a remote Australian desert mining operation. In these locations, there is absolute zero internet connectivity. No cellular towers, no Wi-Fi, no satellite uplink for high bandwidth data.
That creates a massive logistical problem. If a critical vulnerability is found in the engine control module, how do you patch a computer that is essentially offline in the tundra for 6 months at a time?
You are forced to rely on completely offline operations. And this is where the provisioning systems get incredibly creative and consequently incredibly risky.
What do they do?
Well, the NMFTA document details the reality that software updates for these isolated fleets are frequently transported via high-latency physical data paths. We are talking about engineers loading the critical update onto a physical USB drive and handing it to a fleet manager to drive out to the site,
Right.
or literally using the postal service.
I had to read that section of the report twice. They are mailing cybersecurity patches, critical firmware updates through the physical postal mail with a stamp in an envelope.
It sounds absurd in 2026, but if a multi-million-dollar machine in a remote mining facility needs an ECU update to keep functioning and there is no internet, you mail a USB stick to the site foreman. The diagnostic tool operating out in the dirt has to be able to cryptographically authenticate and apply that update completely offline.
How is that even possible? How does the tool verify the digital signature of the update if it can't ping a centralized server to check the keys?
They use cryptographic challenge response protocols similar to what we discussed with UDS, but they relax the timing constraints. They might permit days or weeks to pass between the generation of the challenge and the submission of the response to account for the physical travel time of the data.
Oh, that makes sense.
But to make this offline authentication work smoothly without locking out the mechanics, engineers frequently make a fatal architectural mistake. They embed the cryptographic secrets, the master keys, directly within the offline host-side diagnostic applications.
So we are right back to taping the combination to the bottom of the safe.
Yes, but on a much more dangerous scale. If the mechanic's offline diagnostic tool has the master cryptographic secret hard-coded into its source code, any attacker who acquires a copy of that software can extract the secret. The isolation that required the offline tool becomes the very thing that exposes the key.
The NMFTA report called out several other systemic flaws in how these keys are handled. What else are they doing wrong in the commercial space?
They highlight the severe danger of plaintext key provisioning over unencrypted factory physical connections.
Meaning what, exactly?
During the initial manufacturing of the truck, the factory systems often transmit the secret key to the ECU over a standard, unencrypted USB or serial cable.
Just completely in the clear.
Yep. Anyone who can physically tap that cable on the factory floor or compromise the routing equipment can read the key in plain text as it flies by. But the absolute worst practice they identify is the catastrophic break once, break everywhere model.
Break once, break everywhere. That sounds like a concept from a cryptography horror story. What does it actually mean for the trucks?
It means the manufacturer, in an effort to save time and infrastructure costs, uses the exact same secret cryptographic key across every single ECU of a certain product line.
Oh no.
Yeah. So if an attacker spends 3 months isolating a single truck, reverse engineering its ECU, and extracting the key, they haven't just compromised that one truck. They now possess the master key for every single truck of that model on the planet.
Because the manufacturer didn't build the infrastructure to generate and manage unique, individualized keys for each device off the assembly line.
Key management is expensive and computationally heavy. It's much cheaper to use one master key.
Let's talk about the economics of this.
Yeah.
Who is actually attacking these heavy trucks? I imagine it's not nation-state actors trying to disrupt logistics lines, at least not daily.
The threat landscape here is fiercely economically driven. It's heavily populated by counterfeiters.
Counterfeiters, like fake parts.
Exactly. Their goal is to extract the master keys so they can manufacture incredibly cheap, inferior knockoff ECUs in unregulated factories. By injecting the stolen key into their cheap hardware, the truck's internal network recognizes the counterfeit part as legitimate OEM-certified hardware.
They are spoofing the identity of the physical part to flood the supply chain with cheap hardware.
Right, and the other major threat actors are aftermarket repair shops and fleet tuners. The NMFTA points out a classic, highly profitable scenario. An aftermarket shop wants to modify a commercial engine's ECU identity.
Why would they want to do that?
They want to load the firmware from a high-cost, high-horsepower scarcity stock-keeping unit onto the physical hardware of a low-cost SKU.
Oh, I see. So a trucking company buys the cheapest base model engine. Then they pay a hacker mechanic to break into the ECU and flash the high-performance engine firmware onto it, completely bypassing the OEM's licensing fees for the upgrade. It's software piracy, but for physical diesel engine horsepower.
You've captured the exact dynamic, and these shops do this without any regard for the safety engineering. A low-cost physical engine block might not have the reinforced components or cooling capacity to handle the thermal load generated by the high-cost, high-horsepower firmware.
So it could just blow up.
The engine could literally tear itself apart under load, but the attacker tuning the ECU doesn't care. They already got paid for the upgrade.
How does the heavy truck industry actually stop this bleeding? What is the technical fix?
The NMFTA guidelines are rigid on this. Without proper hardware-backed key storage, specifically placing keys inside a hardware security module or HSM physically inside the ECU, the ecosystem will remain broken.
And an HSM is.
An HSM is a dedicated cryptographic processor that protects the key so it cannot be extracted even if the firmware is reverse engineered. Furthermore, manufacturers must implement unique signing keys for each individual product. You cannot share secrets across ECUs, and you absolutely cannot use trust on first use models unless you can mathematically guarantee the environment is secure.
Okay, stepping back for a moment, the factory floor flashing stations are vulnerable to massive disruption. The fundamental UDS protocol is full of hard-coded holes. Heavy trucks are passing plaintext keys around and getting patched via the Postal Service. This is a staggering amount of systemic chaos. How is the global automotive industry actually fighting back? Regulators must be looking at this absolute mess and stepping in.
They finally are. The era of voluntary suggestion-based security is over. The regulatory hammer is coming down hard, and it is fundamentally rewiring how automotive engineering works from the ground up.
Good.
The two major frameworks we need to dissect are ISSI 21434 and UNEST R155.
Let's break those down. Starting with ISSA 21434. I noticed it replaces an older guideline, SAE J3061. What exactly does this new standard demand?
ISSA 21434 is a massive, comprehensive international standard. It defines the strict engineering requirements for cybersecurity risk management across the entire lifecycle of a vehicle's electrical and electronics systems.
So it's far beyond just saying, make sure you put a firewall in the infotainment system.
Far beyond. It mandates security at every phase. The initial concept, the software development, production on the factory floor, operation, dealership maintenance, and eventual decommissioning. But the most brilliant and crucial aspect of 21434 is that it is strictly technology agnostic.
Explain how a technology-agnostic security standard works in practice. Don't you want the standard to tell you exactly what encryption to use?
If a standard mandates a specific encryption algorithm or a specific brand of firewall, that standard becomes obsolete the moment quantum computing or a new zero-day exploit breaks that technology.
I hadn't thought of that.
The standard avoids hard-coding tech. Instead, it mandates robust processes. It asks, are you performing continuous threat modeling? Do you enforce secure coding standards for your engineers? How are you legally and technically managing vulnerability disclosures?
Got it.
It's about forcing companies to build a permanent culture of security engineering, rather than just checking a technical box to get a car out the door.
Process over product. It creates a flexible framework that survives technological shifts. Where does UNEST R155 fit into this picture?
If 21434 is the blueprint, UNEST R155 is the teeth enforcing it. It's a regulation from the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. It explicitly forces manufacturers to implement a verified cybersecurity management system, or CSMS, in order to receive type approval for new vehicles.
Type approval. For the listener, that means if an automaker does not have a certified CSMS, they literally cannot legally sell their car in any of the dozens of countries that adopt this regulation. It's a total market lockout.
It is a hard gate. You must prove your cybersecurity processes function as designed. And here is the most disruptive element of the regulation. R155 explicitly makes the primary manufacturer, the OEM, legally responsible for managing and controlling the cybersecurity risks of their entire supply chain.
I have to push back on the logistics of that. How on earth can a massive original equipment manufacturer possibly secure their final product when they rely on thousands of smaller Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 suppliers? A tiny supplier making a single sensor might have a terrible IT security posture, yet they have privileged digital access to the OEM's network to deliver software. The InfoSecurity magazine article highlighted smaller suppliers as the primary vector for these massive disruptions.
That tension is the exact friction point the regulation was designed to create. Historically, an OEM could just point the finger at a compromised supplier and say, we got hacked because of them, it's their liability.
Right, passing the buck.
R155 eliminates that excuse. It forces the OEMs to aggressively, ruthlessly audit the cybersecurity posture of every supplier touching their network.
It makes me think of a health inspector shutting down a Michelin star restaurant.
Okay, let's hear it.
The inspector doesn't shut the restaurant down because the executive chef had dirty hands. They shut it down because the farm supplying the lettuce 3 states away had contaminated water, and the pathogen made its way onto the final plate.
Yeah.
The restaurant is ultimately responsible for every ingredient they serve. R155 makes the OEM the restaurant.
That analogy perfectly captures the liability shift. The OEM has to trace the digital lettuce all the way back to the dirt. To understand how massive corporations are actually implementing this in the real world, we should examine the recent case studies published by Deloitte concerning IT/OT convergence.
Yes, the Deloitte studies. They analyzed how major automotive players are trying to build these systemic defenses to comply with regulations. What were their core findings?
Their foundational finding was simple. You cannot secure or manage what you cannot see. In one of their major implementations, they worked with a massive automotive OEM to digitally map their entire physical operation. They integrated all the OT assets, the robotic arms, ECU flashing stations, the programmable logic controllers, or PLCs, into a centralized configuration management database, a CMDB.
A PLC being the ruggedized industrial computer that actually controls the physical machinery on the line. So they took thousands of these physical factory components and created a live digital map of them.
Yes. And once they had that map, they tied it into standardized enterprise IT platforms like ServiceNow to automate vulnerability management.
How did they do it before?
Before this convergence, if a security researcher published a vulnerability for a specific PLC model, tracking down where that PLC lived on the factory floor was a chaotic, manual process of checking spreadsheets and making phone calls.
Sounds like a nightmare.
It was. By automating it, the moment a new threat intelligence feed flags a vulnerability, the CMDB identifies exactly which machine in which factory is running that hardware. ServiceNow then triggers an immediate, automated remediation workflow, sending an alert directly to the tablet of the engineer responsible for that specific assembly line.
That cuts the reaction time from weeks to minutes. It prevents downtime, and critically, it generates the exact audit trail the UN regulators require to prove the CSMS is functioning.
It's a massive leap forward. Another crucial Deloitte case study focused on the human element, specifically the deployment of swarm teams.
I love that terminology. How does a swarm team operate in a manufacturing context?
It's an agile, highly trained, multidisciplinary team designed to manage shop floor IT operations dynamically. In the old model, if a flashing station went down, the line operator submitted a standard IT ticket and waited for someone from corporate IT who might not understand the physical machinery to show up 2 days later.
Too slow.
Exactly. A swarm team, composed of both IT and OT specialists, physically swarms the problem on the factory floor immediately. They establish a baseline of quality and stability for all the manufacturing IT equipment. By handling the day-to-day triage so efficiently, it frees up the high-level security architects to focus on deep threat hunting and advancing the overall digitalization strategy.
Hearing about swarm teams and automated CMDBs provides a profound sense of relief. It proves the industry isn't just throwing its hands up. They are building concrete, systemic mechanisms to gain visibility over the factory floor.
The regulatory pressure is forcing evolution. But securing the factory network and auditing the lettuce farm only secures the vehicle until the moment it rolls off the assembly line.
Which brings us to the final critical piece of this ecosystem. What happens after the vehicle leaves the factory? If the ECU flashing station is locked down and the supply chain is clean, how do the OEMs protect the millions of highly connected cars currently driving down the interstate?
That immense task falls to the VSOC, the Vehicle Security Operations Center.
We are familiar with a traditional corporate SOC. They monitor the employee laptops, the email servers, the firewalls at corporate headquarters. How does the architecture of a VSOC differ?
A corporate SOC is inward-facing. It looks at the company's own IT and OT infrastructure. A VSOC is entirely outward-facing, dedicated solely to the vehicle fleet itself.
Okay.
It continuously monitors the cellular telematics data, the back-end cloud APIs connecting the cars to mobile apps, and crucially, any diagnostic anomalies originating from the physical vehicles out on the road. We spent a long time discussing the UDS protocol earlier.
Right. SID 0x27 security access, the master key mechanism.
The VSOC is heavily focused on monitoring those UDS interactions. According to the Secureware 2025 research, a primary function of the VSOC is collecting in-vehicle security event logs in near real time. If a single car driving down a highway in Ohio suddenly starts generating a massive flood of failed 0x27 security access authentication attempts,
The VSOC analysts see the brute force attack happening live.
they do. But seeing raw logs isn't enough. A VSOC must cross-reference those telemetry logs with complex context data to determine if an attack is actually occurring.
Give me an example of how context data changes the interpretation of a log.
Let's say the VSOC receives a log showing a diagnostic session opening, followed by a 0x34 request download command. That is a firmware injection command. If the VSOC cross-references the vehicle's VIN and sees that the car is currently checked into an authorized dealership in Berlin for scheduled maintenance, that sequence of commands is perfectly legitimate. The mechanic is updating the software.
Right, makes sense.
However, if the telematics data shows that same car is currently moving at 70 miles per hour down the Autobahn and a request download command is initiated, well, that context turns a standard log into a massive critical red flag. Someone is trying to inject firmware into a moving vehicle.
I see.
The VSOC uses maintenance records, GPS data, and threat intelligence digest to filter the noise.
But relying on logs sounds incredibly difficult. A log simply says, failed login attempt. How does an analyst differentiate between a failing sensor glitching out and a targeted, sophisticated attack by a hacker?
It is the hardest challenge in automotive cybersecurity right now. Detecting complex, higher-level attack techniques based purely on fragmented, low-level security events requires immense analytical capability. This Secureware paper explicitly points out that the current standardized security events defined by AUTOSAR, which is the global software architecture standard for automotive development, actually have significant gaps.
So they aren't detailed enough.
No, the native logs simply aren't rich enough yet to support comprehensive automated UDS attack detection out of the box.
If the standardized logs are inadequate, how do the VSOC teams compensate?
They rely on exhaustive machine learning and manual tuning. They have to create a massive baseline of rules and fine-tune them using thousands of false positive logs collected from dedicated test vehicles. You have to teach the VSOC algorithms exactly what a normal failing sensor looks like in a blizzard, or what normal electrical interference looks like near a power plant, before the system can accurately highlight the abnormal behavior of an attacker.
Looking at this entire architecture, the narrative really comes full circle. We started at the factory floor flashing stations. We examined the offline constraints of heavy trucks in the tundra. We analyzed the global UN regulations forcing supply chain audits. And now we are looking at VSOCs monitoring fleets in real time. Automotive cybersecurity cannot be divided into isolated silos anymore.
It cannot function if it remains fractured. The most critical insight from the ecosystem analysis we reviewed is this. If the traditional corporate SOC monitoring the factory and the modern VSOC monitoring the fleet do not actively, continuously exchange telemetry, context, and escalation rules, the entire organization is flying blind.
Because they will completely miss the critical moment when a local factory compromise evolves into a fleet-wide crisis.
Exactly.
If the corporate SOC analysts notice weird routing behavior near an ECU flashing station, but they don't tell the VSOC, and the VSOC sees unusual firmware signatures in 50 cars on the road but doesn't tell corporate IT, neither team realizes they're looking at two halves of the exact same supply chain attack.
Precisely. To synthesize all of this into a unified philosophy, automotive cybersecurity has permanently evolved beyond securing a single physical device. It is no longer just about putting a stronger firewall on a single engine controller. It is entirely about ecosystem resilience. The global supply chain, the robotic assembly line, the internal vehicle network, and the back-end cloud infrastructure are no longer separate entities. They operate and must be defended as a single, highly sensitive digital organism.
It's staggering when you zoom out and look at the sheer scale of the engineering required to protect that organism. It challenges everyone listening, whether you build software, manage IT infrastructure, or work in traditional manufacturing, to think deeply about your own operational environments. Do you truly link your production security evidence with your final product security evidence? Are your factory floor OT teams actively collaborating with your product engineering teams? Because if those silos still exist in your organization, you might have a flashing station vulnerability that you don't even know is quietly compromising your product right now.
That is the ultimate existential question every modern manufacturer needs to be asking themselves today.
That's all for this episode of Cybersecurity Under Pressure. Real attacks, real lessons.
It is endlessly fascinating and admittedly a little terrifying to reflect on the deep, hidden interconnectedness of modern manufacturing. To fully realize that a single line of vulnerable code sitting quietly in a mechanics diagnostic tablet in an offline repair shop or embedded in an ECU flashing station on a factory floor possesses the potential to bring a multi-billion-dollar global production line to its knees.
See you in the next chapter.
Check your PLCs, especially those connected to ECU flashing stations, and maybe question whether that air gap is really an air gap.
You have been listening to Cybersecurity Under Pressure. Real Real attacks, real lessons. Real incidents leave real lessons. Stay prepared. Stay critical. And keep following the evidence.